Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I'm your host, Mary Catherine Ham, and I am here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We're going to do some assassination news update, such that it is assassination attempt news update. We got Kamala taking questions from the National Association of Black Journalists. We got Trump taking questions on Gutfeld. He's all over the place, and now he's on Gutfeld. We got some polls, we got some endorsement news, and Hezbollah blowing up all over the place with any 90s electronic device they're trying to use. So we will get to all of that in a moment. But first, since I'm not as outraged today, I got all my outrage into one episode. I'm still pretty outraged, but we're going to allow for the normal deep breath. We're going to do some chit chat. I'm going to feel better about the world. Vic, how you doing?
Hello, Mary Catherine. I think that you owe our listeners an honest explanation for the rage from last episode, which is, in part ostensibly because of the coverage of the assassination attempt and the fact that somebody went after him and almost did it again. But the truth is, of course, it was a roid rage that we witnessed because you're on those performance-enhancing, supplements.
Performance-enhancing podcast drugs, yes.
And what are they called? Anabolic.
Mm-hmm.
Anabolic steroids. And it's like, you had that moment. It was like Randy Savage there. It was really something. No,
it was deserved.
It was
deserved.
They deserved the beatdown. I'm doing fine. It's important when you get to I remember our old friend Richard Starr telling me, wait till you get to 40s and then you get to your 50s about, worrying about your parents and elder care and taking care and things like that. And he's right about that. That's where all the stress gets shifted away from your own personal issues until then you have to deal with somebody else's. And then,
right.
And then you just, I would say it's important, for if you have parents who are around, you always want to check in on them and call and see how they're doing every day. Obviously, just to see if they pick up the phone. That's always a first thing,
Right.
But secondly, just see what they're up to. And I do this, with my dad, and I call every other day or just about. And every now and then I'll ask him how he's doing. And one day it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon or little. I said, how you doing? He goes, oh, great. He says, I just got back from lunch. And I said, wait a minute. Don't you mean dinner at your age? But no, he had gotten together with a bunch of his other old friends in the old Filipino community. And they went out to a buffet and they just sat and gossiped for hours.
Oh, love
at the
that.
buffet, which is really great. And usually it consists of so-and-so has this problem, so-and-so has that problem. Oh, do you remember so-and-so? And then I know the next one is he died, and so that's the conversation. But they do this and they all hang out at a place that it's a local buffet place. And so, I mean, and I said, oh, which place is it? This place that I'm not a fan of this place. And he goes, oh yeah, it's great. The day, but it is, it's a little bit, it's a little pricey. It's $11 all you can eat. And I said, first of all these people sitting around the table, I know they're retired, but they're like former doctors or nurses or whatever. And I just go, oh, I said $11. Oh man, I can imagine what our friend Hugh Hewitt thinks about an $11 all you can eat buffet. Again, I've been to this buffet. I would say definitely skip the sushi.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, if inflation seems like it's skipped past your buffet place, you may have a food safety issue.
Yes, That's right. Stick to anything fried. I think anything fried is going to be good. And my dad seems
Kamala's going to be standing in front of that buffet like, what is everyone complaining about?
What is everyone complaining about? It's $11.
You can have all you can eat for $11.
These California rolls are amazing. Some of them might have fish in it. I don't know. It's crazy. crab stick, whatever. But that's what I think it's anything fried is pretty much good. And he knows, I think the general aim is, if they have shrimp, get the fried shrimp because that's always a big hit. And that really hits the buffet place hard. That's where I think was the most money. And I was reminded of having gone to a buffet out in Vegas with Sonny Bunch. And this was the Caesar's Palace buffet.
Right.
And that one is called the Bacchanal buffet, the Bacchanal buffet. And that one, unlike the buffet in Jersey, this is $42 a person.
Oh, wow.
You can eat. So they do up their game. I think the food quality is significantly better, enjoyable. You really have to pace yourself. Again, you want to walk around, see what's there. Don't fill up on bread, obviously, and stuff like that. But what struck me about being there with Sonny and I have pictures that no one will ever see of him with just we have these big plates of food, is you look around and it's like the same people at any other buffet, which is amazing. They just happen to be willing to spend more on this buffet. So
Right.
it's not like a high end, it's not that, you're not going to, like, the clientele is still the same. It's a buffet client. Everybody's in a tracksuit.
Well, they're in Vegas, so they're at
And
the
it's
treat
Vegas.
yourself buffet, but
Yes.
they're buffet people.
But they're buffet people.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I look at the stuff that they're piling on their plates. And then I think, like, these people are animals. And I think they probably say the same thing about me.
Oh yeah.
They're
Yeah.
looking like, look at these guys. You can go back and you're afraid that, as if it's going to be gone. And it was a combination of people like us,
Mhm.
the buffet people, and then these Japanese tourists who are very, like, delicate and dainty. And yet they're there. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious what they're getting.
I
And
don't know.
it's mostly, it's lighter fare.
It's so nice to see the pot and the kettle at the buffet together.
Yes. Would you do that, though? I mean, have you ever done a high price
A
buffet?
high price buffet. So
Yeah.
I think when I was just thinking about this because I'm not sure that I like a higher end version of the low end food I like.
Uh-huh.
Right? I
Right.
think sometimes when you have high end mac and cheese,
Uh-huh.
it's not good. It's like,
overkill.
why are we
Yeah.
messing with it? But when you have high end biscuits, chicken and
Oh.
biscuits or something,
Yeah.
the fast food version at a good place outdoes
be
it
good.
usually.
Right.
It's
Or
not
the
that I
fried
don't
chicken.
enjoy it, but I don't want to spend that much money on
Right.
fancy hipster chicken and waffles, right?
Right. I think that the longest lines you'll find at those kind of places are going to be for the seafood. So crab legs
Mhm.
and shrimp.
So if I'm going higher end buffet, my
Yeah.
choice is, and it's buffet adjacent, my
Mhm.
choice is like a fogo de chao
Oh,
because they do have
you put the
basically
card
a
up.
buffet situation.
Yeah.
You're not going, the salad bar is amazing. I know it's a sin to go
It's
to
a
the
trap.
salad bar at Fogo de Chao,
Yeah, it's a trap.
but it's amazing.
The bread's amazing. It's
The
a trap.
the meat's amazing, and they just will keep bringing it to you. So that would be my
Yes.
choice if I were going higher end on that. You reminded me of one of my first news stories as a reporter in North Carolina. I was a features and sports reporter,
Ooh.
basically,
Yeah.
in my first job. And they sent me out to do a feature story on a group of retired old guys who sat around at the Mabry's drugstore in Hamlet, North Carolina. Mabry's Drug and Home Care, I believe it's called, is an old-fashioned drugstore from
Yeah,
way back.
A drugstore. People ate at drugstores.
Yes, on a tiny little downtown street where
Oh my
most of the
gosh, they have a
businesses have
counter.
since
Yeah.
vacated.
Sure.
But Mabry's Drug remains there. It's a pharmacy. It has all the weird seat for your shower kind of stuff,
yeah,
right?
those things on one section and at the same time.
And in the front section, there was a little table where 5 or 6 guys would just sit around and drink kind of crappy coffee and talk. And they called themselves, I'm going to censor it as I did in my feature piece. They called themselves the Can't Remember Stuff Club, the CRS Club.
Yeah.
And just hung around at this pharmacy talking junk,
And
reminiscing.
you sat with them
I did.
and just did a lot of color reporting and
I
stuff
did,
like that.
and it was a sweet little story, and they enjoyed it. I was
Oh, I bet.
a 22-year-old reporter,
Oh, I'm sure.
fresh out of
I'm
college.
sure. See right here, little lady. Yeah.
But I like the idea of them being at the pharmacy because it's all your needs in one place
It is.
at that time,
It
right?
is. That's right.
They're going to complain about their ailments and then they're going to get their medication
Right.
while they're there. So yes, those,
It's like, oh, this was a delicious meal. Excuse me, I forgot. I need to pick up the hot water bottle.
yeah.
Isn't
That
that
was
what they
now-
used to use, a hot water bottle?
The CRS Club feature was now 20 years ago, so I think most of those
Wow.
guys probably
Oh,
are
God bless.
dearly departed at
They're
this
in
point.
they're in the drugstore in the sky.
Yes, I did a
Yeah.
lot of stories like that. I did a story on an elderly woman named Myrtle.
That's a
I believe her
great
name was
name.
Myrtle Williams,
That's a
who
great name.
was like 85 years old, but
Uh-huh.
still got up like with a hatchet and went out and like gardened all morning. A hatchet
That turns
and
out to be
a
the
hatchet
secret.
and a spade, and just was like, growing her own food. And she every
That's
feature
great.
story you did in rural North Carolina, you got sent home with food, and it was fantastic. I think that might be technically ethically questionable. I'm not sure I'm supposed to take food from my sources, but
Yeah.
I felt
But you
that
took
like
it from Myrtle.
I felt that like some fresh zucchini was
Okay.
within the ethical range.
Yes.
So,
I'm sure it was good. Maybe, it sounds like a scene out of, the Andy Griffith Show, or maybe
I mean,
RFD. Yeah.
being there, this is the thing that I say about media frequently that I bemoan, is that the loss of small town newspapers.
Yes.
I
Those
think
kind of things are gone. The stories are gone, right?
It's sad for
Yeah.
people in those towns, because covering those town councils is important, all that kind of thing. But it's also sad for journalists who don't get that experience, because my experience was, daily writing, several deadlines per day, coming up with stories, driving all over a 3-county area, not 3-county, but 3-town area within a giant county, meeting people every day who I would never have met if I was just working an office job in this small town. And it really connected me to that place. And I had a really formative 18 months, 2 years there. And journalists don't do that anymore. They just go straight from Hamas protesting at Columbia to the New York Times. And so that is...
You mean like they're in the protest?
Yeah, the pro-Hamas rally.
And then they become hired as journalists.
To the New York Times newsroom. Yeah. So that's... By the way, did you see... there's a quick media story before we get... Did you see that the New York Times Tech Guild, reported by Semaphore, is threatening to strike right before the election? That would mean that the New York Times election needle that everyone refreshes obsessively might not be there for you.
It would be disabled
this election season. So they do have quite a bit of leverage. But I noticed that among the things they're asking for is pet bereavement accommodations.
You mean they're like the guild demands? So not questions about pension or benefits. Well, that is a benefit, I guess.
Well, there are other things, but among
pet
the
bereavement
requests, a weird one was, one of their requests was to ban scented products in the bathrooms, which I guess is like a sensory thing. Like there's probably a...
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, that might be a way to tell people to wear less perfume. Maybe that's the delicate
and then your
way of
other
saying
one,
that,
the other one was like, if your French bulldog dies,
my company, I deserve to have my company pay for.
I guess. I don't know how much time they want, but that's like, these are journalists. They running toward the fire. Tough people.
Boy, that needs to get spread far and wide. That's unbelievable.
Pet bereavement leave.
That's right.
Anyway, okay.
How are you otherwise?
I'm good. I'm good. My oldest went to a retreat. So her school does a special retreat for the oldest kids in the school. Right. So when they reach a certain point of maturity, they go away for 2 days.
I was going to say, is there a theme? It's just a class bonding retreat.
It's class bonding, but it's Christian. So they're, it's like
religious.
Going to a Christian
it's a religious
summer
retreat.
camp.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So like a church retreat, basically.
Yeah.
But so they went up there. But the thing I love about it and this school is that those kids don't have devices, and we can get in touch with their teachers if we need to. But they're basically just out of touch for 2 days.
That's great.
And they're deemed mature enough to handle that. And the parents are deemed mature enough to handle that. We'll see. Who knows if they are.
You got to wean them off. It's very hard if you get them hooked on. So, I mean, that's great news.
Yeah. So they're off being independent and singing worship songs and doing that stuff. So she was very excited. So I hope she's been hearing about this trip for years, and it's really a rite of passage. So I hope she's having a wonderful time.
Your daily schedule gets 25% easier.
It really doesn't, because the older kids are helpful. So it's like, yeah. But I guess we have fewer things to transport her to. So there's that.
Yes.
So anyway, we're doing good over here. Let's do a little assassination news update. Shall we? The assassination attempt happened on Sunday. We are recording on Thursday. I pulled up a news search on Google for Ryan Rouse. Ryan Wesley Rouse is the suspect in this case. And it looks like we have one story.
Great.
One story in the Washington Post. The headline is "A Journey from North Carolina to Ukraine to Suspect in Apparent Assassination Attempt." I'm not sure is it a parent or is it just an assassination attempt? Where did the apparent come from? Because I feel like even the federal agencies agree.
Yeah.
That this is an assassination attempt.
Has he? Well, we don't know what he's actually said, right? I assume that they've been interrogating him, for the past several days and getting information, but we just don't know what that information is right now. Right.
Oh, wait. Fox News just added a story. Trump assassination attempt suspect Ryan Routh smirks in new Florida mugshot as more life details emerge. He does look rather pleased with himself in his mugshot. Other than that, every other story I'm bringing up 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So we're done with that story now.
Well, it's not a big deal, as you know.
Apparently, it's not. I do want to play for you a clip from Kamala Harris, and we're going to do a little bit more about this interview, but she did do an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists, and she was across from 3 different reporters, one of which is the head of the White House Correspondents Association, the one who erroneously accused Brian Kilmeade of saying something racist on TV a month ago.
That's right. Yeah. They tried really hard to push that one.
Yeah. So he was there, and they're asking her questions, and they ask her the most friendly possible version of a question about assassination attempts, because it doesn't even really mention assassination attempts. Let me play this for you. The question is, do you have full confidence in the Secret Service? So let's just think about how light that question is to begin with, right? There's no mention of like, why would we have questions about the Secret Service, which, by the way, I did check today, has not yet turned in its book report.
Yeah, the book,
There's no breaking news on that front. Here's Kamala Harris. You guys tell me what you think of this answer.
Do you have full confidence in the Secret Service to protect all of you?
I do.
You feel safe, you and your family?
I do. But, I mean, you can go back to Ohio. Not everybody has Secret Service. And there are far too many people in our country right now who are not feeling safe. I mean, I look at Project 2025, and I look at, like the Don't Say Gay laws coming out of Florida. Members of the LGBTQ community don't feel safe right now. Immigrants or people with an immigrant background don't feel safe right now. Women don't feel safe right now.
Okay, so first of all, listeners wouldn't be able to see this, but my head actually exploded like Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's beautiful when it explodes. Okay, I've reassembled it. Still the same size, unfortunately. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, she's telling the truth when she says that her values haven't changed, because she just revealed it right there. So in a weird way, when you're trying to get her, obviously people were trying in the past to get her to answer these questions about her positions, let's say from 2019 and the now famous ACLU questionnaire about all these different things regarding social issues and funding for, trans surgeries for illegal immigrants or prisoners and legalizing hard drugs, whatever it is. Everything she just said just now in that clip basically says the answer is yes. That's how she still feels. So that in her mind, talking about the Secret Service, yes, they do a good job. They work really hard. Oh, and now let me throw in this to make sure I check off these boxes with this particular audience or with the voters that I'm listening to, that, lots of people are unsafe out there because of policies and the rhetoric of the other side.
Of my opponent.
I don't even know where to begin, because she starts with Ohio and then she works her way down the list.
So I know where to begin. This is the answer of a sociopath.
So that's not good. That's not good.
There's a thing that happens, which is that Democrats, by virtue of being Democrats, get credit for being empathetic. That's why Biden, the empathizer in chief, can also check his watch at Dover, right?
Yeah,
he just gets credit because Bo died and because tragedy. He just is empathetic. Well, Kamala is empathetic, even though she's never called the Abbey Gate families on the phone, even though they've sought audiences with her and discussions with her. She just is empathetic. Like, how could you even wonder? But then she's asked a question that very clearly is about the Secret Service, because her opponent has been almost murdered 2 times in the last 2 months, and she does not even reference it.
Don't make people think about it.
She does not even reference it. So I said, this is a sociopath answer. This is like to not even give a throat clearing.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I'm so glad that Donald Trump is healthy. Nothing. Now, part of it is that she doesn't have really the skills to do this. But part of it is, again, they don't care. They don't care. And
at a minimum, they don't care, and if you read, like
Right.
you mentioned in, John Podhoretz's piece
yeah,
about that sort of wish fulfillment, it could be a lot worse in people's minds, obviously. So, I
yes.
mean, but this is how they feel about it, because as you mentioned, doesn't mention it. And then let me get through my litany of things. So again, it starts off with Ohio, and then it ends with the quote unquote "don't say gay" law, as in that was a thing, as in that's what it is, and that's what happened, and that's why books are
It's just, like,
banned.
riddled
and
with
it's just,
nonsense. But
it's all
also,
swimming around in her head, these various points, and they just come right out.
so can you imagine if I, who am just a cable news commentator,
Right.
if I were asked about the Secret Service in the wake of 2 assassination attempts
Mhm.
on the vice president within 2 months, and I said, oh, I think Trump feels pretty safe. That's the first thing she says. She feels totally safe. Well, I'm glad for you.
Yeah.
But there's a reason people don't feel safe. So maybe address that. But if I were asked about 2 assassination attempts on her in the Secret
Right.
Service,
And it's pretty, it's
And I
pretty
just-
obvious what they're getting at.
and I just didn't say, gee, I'm glad that the vice president is still with us.
Mhm.
If I just
Oh,
went right by that and then was like, let me talk about who she's making unsafe,
you wouldn't hear the end of it.
I would be fired. I mean, that's a fireable offense. Here's what the sociopaths in my mentions were like, oh, what's she supposed to do? Cry giving her answer? I'm like, well, you guys get really emo about a lot of stuff. So I would
Yeah.
suggest that maybe this is one of the things you should get a little emo about. But I suggested off the top of my head,
Mhm.
here's an answer. Let me start by saying it's a sad and horrifying day when any political figure is targeted for death for the sin of engaging in our free political system. One assassination attempt has already left one good American citizen, father and husband dead, Corey Compertory, and we mourn with his loved ones. And we count ourselves blessed and our country blessed that neither of these assassination attempts has succeeded. And I am personally so thankful my opponent Donald Trump as well, and I have called him to check in on him. In this country, we compete with words and policies, not political violence. I am proud of the brave men and women of the Secret Service who have protected us from a more calamitous result, and I want to make sure that the agency's leadership is held accountable for mistakes, which my friends in Congress, AOC, and others in a bipartisan manner have so ably pointed out in questioning these officials. And B, I want to make sure that they have all the resources they need to protect Donald Trump in the most effective ways possible, and myself and my vice presidential nominee, as President Biden said this weekend. There you go. Like that was off the top of my head writing a tweet. But she can't do that, and she doesn't want to do that because she doesn't care.
Those remarks would have been perfect and apt in a Josh Shapiro campaign, by the way. I think that's my suspicion.
He could manage that. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think. Maybe Westmore. But
Oh.
no, not this. You cannot give them an inch. So don't make people it's the same way as, they don't want to refute, they don't want to acknowledge things like Afghanistan because it makes people think about bad things. And the same thing, they can't talk about this. And now I understand that she and Biden both called, Trump, and the conversation was cordial. And then it's back out
that's
on
the other thing. Everybody was like, she called him. She called him. And I'm like, great. That's a private conversation.
Right.
Do you know what needs to be public?
Yeah.
You being dismayed by political violence perpetrated on your opponent. That needs to be public.
Right. And
things
it's concerning because, again, what are the things that Ralph tweeted about, right? He said that, democracy's on the ballot.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's a talking point, right? Among Democrats, or in at least in the Biden campaign. And so I hope they can dial that back.
By the way, a quick correction for us.
Oh, okay.
On yesterday's reporting, it was an SKS, not an AK-47.
Really?
As news delivered to me by the able fact checker and weapons expert, Steve.
Oh,
he said he had a larger mag, which made it look sort of like an AK. But
AK-47, yeah. But
so just to correct that,
that is a heavy. I'm going to get in trouble here and get a lot of probably fact checks on this. So I'm not a gun expert, but I've held an SKS. That is a heavy semi-automatic rifle. It doesn't have I don't think it does, at least to my memory, like a banana clip, but it's, and so it's not as we had speculated, some sort of a machine gun that he had gotten from, but it's still, obviously very lethal. So Soviet style.
Another thing that is been kept private to this point still is the book report I keep referring to from the Secret Service on what went wrong. We're just getting sort of grumbling from senators. Senator Blumenthal in particular has been very upset about what he views as stonewalling happening from federal agencies on this. Now Ron Johnson of Wisconsin has joined the chorus. He described the level to which, this is Fox News reporting, the level to which the Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service have prevented the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee from obtaining crucial materials to investigate the failures that led to the assassination attempts against former President Trump. Things like the autopsy report, he says, the House has it under subpoena. We don't have it, he told reporters. The toxicology report. We don't have any of the trajectory reports. So where'd the bullets go? We don't even know how they handled the crime scene, said Johnson, ranking member of this committee. The senator pointed to the amount of time that has passed since the July 13th assassination attempt against Trump, noting there's just basic information we should have right now, and we don't have it. I would also add to that, there's been another assassination attempt.
Yeah. After a while, you start getting confused and you're thinking that this is the report on what just happened, in Florida. But in fact, we're still talking about Butler.
Yeah.
And
I should stipulate this is the first assassination.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it.
He says, we haven't been able to interview the sniper who took out Thomas Crooks, Johnson said. That sounds like real basic stuff here.
Yeah. You would think they would have known or learned from the last terrible, assassination from 1963, how many years ago that is, 50, 60 years ago now, about crime scenes and forensics involving a president or a presidential candidate, in this case, or a former president. And yet it sounds like it's kind of a mess. My fear is that they do know have information on the dead assassins, internet searches and other things like that, and contacts perhaps. And that's my fear, is that just talk to people. Who knows? We don't know.
Well, again, I know that the press corps is not interested in foreign interference anymore.
Yeah.
I know that because, by the way, I think 0 people have corrected the record on the bomb threats that they speculated coming from just like Trump supporters who were angry in Springfield, Ohio. There was 33 bomb threats. The governor, Mike DeWine, says those came from a foreign entity and were hoaxes. He's trying to reassure the people of Ohio that that's where this is coming from. There was not a physical danger posed. Right. There is a danger posed to our news cycle and our polity by this foreign interference, but no one's interested in that. No, and everyone keeps doubling down on the idea that these are like Trump supporters calling into City Hall.
Right. And Governor DeWine is also not revealing what countries these calls are coming from.
Right.
One or more. So I guess that's the end of the news for that.
Yeah, I think we're done with this. Yeah. Did you see, by the way, speaking of more foreign interference and nobody's going to care about?
Oh, yeah.
Iranian hackers sent stolen Trump campaign info to the Biden campaign?
Yes. As of this recording, we don't know what the Biden campaign did with that information.
I mean, if it were good,
it's something people will find out.
If it were good, it would have leaked. Yeah. We'd have it already.
Sure. Yeah.
We'd have it already.
But you know what? I'm sure Adam Schiff is going to be on this one.
Yeah, they're going to be
really wanting to investigate him and Eric Swalwell.
We should also note that there remains evidence and threat that the Iranians want to take out Donald Trump.
Right.
This is like an intel finding by the intel community.
They're all trying to help in different ways. The Russians and the Iranians. Let me think about this.
So just stay tuned for the avalanche of coverage of foreign influence and foreign interference in our elections.
I mean, we've said this before, but, there are people who feel very strongly that he can't win, he must not win. And then it's getting to this point, which is very distressing.
Speaking of which, sorry, I'm like going off on all the things that annoy me, but one of the people who was determined that he should not serve as legitimate president because he didn't like him was Peter Strzok. Remember Peter Strzok?
Oh, man.
FBI agent. Yeah, he sued the feds for having disclosed his text messages with his paramour.
That's
which
right, Lisa
were
Page.
On government phones. Those texts belong, that boring sext chain belongs to us, okay, as the taxpayers. There's no expectation of privacy on those phones, and yet he was given several $1 million.
Yeah, a settlement by the Biden administration, yes.
And thanks for your work, Pete.
Yeah, and it's funny because, after this second attempt, Trump's life, I noticed on CNN they had Andrew McCabe, another great
good.
former FBI guy. All these guys who have, involved with the Russian collusion hoax. And there they are. They got these jobs. They get $1 million settlements.
McCabe fired for cause.
Yeah.
Fired for lack of candor. And then he, among other things, lack of candor. And then he goes on TV and talks about how, like, the public trust is very important.
Right. You can't.
Like, y'all made up a 4-year story.
You can't fail. You can only fail upward. So
it's amazing.
Anyway.
It's amazing. Anyway, he got a couple $1 million. You're welcome, everyone.
What surprised me, to go back to the Kamala Harris's recent interview with the National Black Journalists Association, was I imagined that there were going to be a lot of softballs. I mean, I think one of the interviewers is in fact very, they're friendly with each other.
Right.
There were some tough questions, and I think, and she pushed back, and I think she was kind of bothered and irked, if you will, by the how dare you try to get actual answers from me regarding, let's say, gun control issues, handguns versus semi-automatics, and how would you handle that? And she just kept on she just goes back to talking points.
Yes.
So it was more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I agree. So she's asked at the NABJ, I agree with you, because I was surprised by the pushback here about how illegally obtained handguns kill more people than assault weapons. This is an important distinction, that long guns actually are not, they're the problem in this very specific kind of shooting, but they are not the problem for shootings in general, as the majority of firearms use.
Exactly.
So let's hear from her.
For someone can buy a lethal weapon if they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. You might just want to know.
And respectfully, we do understand that.
But you're asking about...
I'm asking specifically about handguns, because many of those handguns aren't purchased in places.
Universal background checks apply to handguns.
Yes.
They do.
But in many instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago about the gun show loophole and why we need to close that. Because what ends up happening is that gun shows at flea markets, gun dealers are not, under existing law in the past, required to register their sales.
Do you understand?
Yeah, that's where they all go to the gun show, by the way, to get the black market is actually the gun show.
She's just making stuff up.
No, and then she just goes back to, she has to find ways to just bring it back to what she knows and what she can talk about. And so,
which is almost nothing.
Right. And there's a great, one of her other various rhetorical, I hate to even use it as a trick, because it's really not a trick. It's pretty lame, but she'll just say, let me start by saying, and then that's it. And then know that they're not going to have a follow-up. In this case, I'm glad they said respectfully, which meant you knew that they were going to disagree.
Well, you can see her get annoyed.
Yeah.
And then you can see her mind sort of spin out when she catches it a bit, but she says, well, and that's why I have always been adamant.
Right.
By the way, I'd love to see, these things keep coming out, like, oh, I worked at McDonald's, I protested at the gun show. Like, where's do we have any record of this?
I grew up in Oakland.
By the way, the reporters for this were Tanya Mosley of NPR, Garen Keith Gaynor of the Grio, and Eugene Daniels, who's the one who started the Brian Kilmeade smear of Politico. Those were the three journalists. There's also a moment, and I'm just going to explain it to you guys because I can't play the clip. When she says goodbye to them, when she's done. First of all, I thought her, not to steal a Trumpism, but she was very low energy.
Yes.
Like her vibe is,
I think that's intentional. She's trying to come off as serious, perhaps.
I guess it seems sort of sad sack. But at any rate, when she says goodbye to them, she stands up, she shakes each of their hands, very arm's length. Like it's a straight-armed handshake. Wow. There's no like
hugging.
There's no affection.
No.
She shakes each of their hands and then she skedaddles like real fast off of the stage.
That's very interesting.
And then the NPR reporter Tanya Mosley and Eugene Daniels exchange a look that is very much like what just happened here.
Wow. Unexpected. Intriguing.
Like it
behind the scenes. Yeah.
Very, very noticeable. Like both of them just do like,
I think she was very upset that it wasn't as much of a softball as she expected it to be. And good for them if that is in fact what happened. And you'd hate to be on her staff right now. This election continues to be tied. It's neck and neck. And on that side of things, knowing that, on average, staff turnover is 93+%. It's very hard, apparently, working for her. And people who used to work for her, of course, have said, to the press that they've had to seek therapy. And that's how bad it is working for her. Remember, when she was Attorney General, an intern said that whenever she walked in, everybody in the morning would have to stand up in the morning when she walked in the room and say, "Good morning, General."
Right.
Good morning,
and these
General.
are old reports. This is not something coming out now that she's top of the heap. These are things that came out
always been.
contemporaneously.
Yes.
I also want to play one more just to tell you. She's asked about Trump's appeal to black men.
Oh.
This is a really important part of the Democratic coalition. Yeah. You'd imagine that this one she'd have like a really solid answer for. So here we go.
But polling shows that some black men, particularly young black men, are considering voting for Donald Trump, and they see him as better for the economy. What is your message to young black male voters who feel left out of this economy, and how can your economic policies materially change their lives?
So I appreciate the spirit of the question, but I'll tell you, I've often been asked this question in a way that I've had to respond by first saying that I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am black, but because the policies and the perspectives I have understands what we must do to recognize the needs of all communities.
So she didn't actually address Trump's connection and the attraction to Trump.
No, and look, she says part of that is the right message. I'm not taking you for granted.
Yeah.
I want to earn your vote. Okay. I just said that in 1.5 seconds.
Right.
Okay.
No, she's dodging these word salads, man.
Well, and
it's
she
a big thing.
specifically says, I'm asked this question a lot. And here's my totally unskillful, unpracticed, unthought about answer. Now, she does eventually at the end get around to mentioning some economic policies. But as always with her economic policy talk, it's like not good policies. That's a matter of opinion, I guess. I'm not a fan, but like also not specific, also not speaking to specific needs of this community. It's also deeply unimpressive.
Yeah. If you find yourself in this situation, I'm sure, you've been on TV and radio and podcasts for a long time where you're not sure suddenly you're listening to yourself talking.
Yes.
And then the more you listen to yourself talking, you're just talking and not saying anything. And I think that's constantly on our mind. And the more it's on our mind, the worse it gets. Well, keep in mind, like when she was in Pennsylvania, right? And part of her stump speech which was, I think last week, was she had a line about celebrating women and allowing women to celebrate themselves as women.
Okay.
That's something. It's filler. It's filler.
Not everyone is a gifted public speaker, right? And I think sometimes we put too much stock in that, as with Obama, who I don't think had a record that showed he would be a good leader, but he was a great public speaker.
Oh, man. Amazing.
However, I have rarely seen one person who has been practicing public speaking on really big stages for this long and remains so bad at it.
Right.
It's kind of amazing. I'm going to play you one more clip from her. This is answering the "Are you better off?"
Are they better off now than they were 4 years ago?
So when we came into, well, first of all, let me just say it is good to be with the National Association of Black Journalists, and I thank you for the work you do and that your members do every day. It is very important that we ensure that this organization and your members always have the resources and the platforms to deliver the voices that must be heard. So I thank you for hosting me today. 4 years ago, when we came in during the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. We came in during the worst public health epidemic in centuries. We came in after the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And a lot of it due in large part to the mismanagement by the former president as it relates to COVID and obviously January 6th. And we had then a lot of work to do to clean up a mess. As of today, we have created over 16 million new jobs, over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. We have the lowest Black unemployment rate in generations. We have invested in small businesses, and they're to the benefit of many people, but including Black small businesses, some of the highest rate of creation of new Black small businesses in years.
So that doesn't answer the question. And to the extent that it does,
yeah,
this is where journalists would go, that sounds like a yes.
Right. It's a tacit acknowledgement that things were bad when we,
right.
If
so
you
are you saying
but
yes?
We inherited it. We inherited it is what she's saying.
I mean, the
Which
problem
is not true with unemployment.
The problem for her is there's not a good answer. She can't say yes and she can't say no.
Right.
Because yes is going to piss people off and no is the truth, but will also piss people off.
It's still remarkable to me that how close the election is. And maybe it has to do with obviously people really not liking Trump, but considering the state of the economy and things obviously better now, and then the Fed rate cut and everything else, and inflation's going down, but things were really bad, and they're trying to bring down inflation that they had themselves caused, and yet between that and all the other indicators, and the crisis at the border and illegal immigration, it amazes me that the race is that close.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I would venture
and again,
to say,
they just continue to dodge. But she's not.
I'd venture to say that, like as we said during the primary, if Republicans had picked someone different, which they didn't, and I respect the voters on this, that making that pitch would be simpler.
Mm-hmm. I think the voters wanted, they wanted an exciting close election. That's why they chose.
Who doesn't love that?
Yeah, okay, so they didn't choose Harris. Nobody chose Harris.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, suspense. I love suspense.
Hold on.
Yes, what?
Hold that thought, Vic. I'm going to play one quick bananas clip that has been resurfaced of Harris in California. She's standing with a crowd and she's talking about gun stuff since she answered the gun question here. Let's play this old clip because this one's pretty remarkable.
Responsible behaviors among everybody in the community, and just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Have you heard from...
So it's cool. She's just like, shut up, phone. She's just a sociopath with a giant authoritarian streak who wants to disarm you. So don't worry.
Somebody, you know what? I want to say, and we want to say, can somebody answer the question? But nobody's going to be able to answer the question she won't answer. She's not going to take any more. I mean, she's going to go on with Oprah. Maybe Oprah will ask her about that.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure. I'm sure.
I love how she says the sanctity. I love how she says the sanctity. It's the irony of the sanctity of your home. And we're going to go into what?
And we're
just coming in.
The sanctity of your locked home.
Yeah.
And we're going to come in. By the way, there's nothing about a warrant.
Oh, no. So what did you mean by that when you said this? That's the question. Anybody can ask that if they're within proximity of her.
Oh, no. Surely we cannot. Let me play you another bonkers clip.
Okay.
Bonkers. This is Nancy Pelosi.
All right.
Talking just now to Semaphore. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm. You had reportedly said you wanted a sort of an open primary if Joe Biden stepped down. Did you change your mind because you saw all the excitement around Kamala Harris?
No, I didn't change my mind. We had an open primary and she won it. Nobody else got in the race because she was politically astute. And
she goes on to repeat it again, that it was an open primary and Kamala just won the nomination.
I don't know. I wonder if George Clooney feels the same way when he wrote that op-ed in the New York Times with the blessing of Barack Obama saying that we should have an open primary, and it happened. And I guess they forgot to get somebody to challenge her.
This is just the blatant...
Yeah, it's rewriting
of history.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's total revisionist.
In front of your eyeballs. And
people clapped. People thought it was great.
Okay. Of course. I remember the open primary.
I remember that. Yeah.
Kamala Harris was just demonstrated such...
She was there. She was there at the
awesomeness.
primary debate, and there was nobody else who showed up. Do you remember? She was all alone at the podium. Anyway,
I'm losing my mind.
it's
These people
it's
are
quite it's quite remarkable.
so
It is quite remarkable.
invested in
Yeah.
lying to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
They are
your
so invested
face.
in it.
All right.
Anyway, and nobody will fact check her. Like,
All right.
maybe a smattering.
Yeah.
Can we get Daniel Dale on this, guys?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he'll do a
Anyway.
great job.
All right. So Trump was on Gutfeld.
Yes. Yes, he
That's-
was.
I do look, as a person who thinks leaders should take questions, even
Mhm.
when it's a liability for him, which I think it often is because he's
Yeah.
not disciplined.
Yeah.
I like that he takes questions. I like that
Right.
he goes places. I like
Right.
that he doesn't have a list of pre-vetted questions
Sure.
that he gives anybody, And then it can go disastrously for him, but it apparently didn't on Gutfeld.
No, it's funny. Obviously, he was in a very friendly venue. He was getting easy questions. They loved having him on. So I mean, they treated him as graciously as they would any other guest on the panel in the hot seat there, because he's sitting in the chair. He was sitting, I think, in actually Tyrus's chair. Tyrus had to move over, and they made a joke about that. But what you see, but it's not like he doesn't take tough questions. Obviously, Trump loves to talk, and he talks with the press all the time. But what you see again is that other Trump, where he's not at the campaign rallies haranguing and going off on these insane tangents and not staying focused, that everyone needs to say that he needs to be more disciplined. What you see is him being sort of very relaxed in this atmosphere, taking questions, making jokes, being very casual, and not thinking in his mind the way Kamala Harris does. How am I supposed, what do I say? How do I say it? And what, all these, it just, Trump is the exact opposite. Like, love him or hate him, he's just going to tell you what he's
Just
thinking.
gonna put it out there.
Yeah, and he's very good at just, completely extemporaneously. He was funny. They talked about the golf, and he said, have you played golf lately? No, not lately. It hasn't really been on my mind. And he talked about the incident, and then he went out of his way to talk about the Secret Service and praised them, and that Biden and Harris, both, gave him a call, and it was cordial. But
so can I just say, and it's sort of, it's so counterintuitive that like lefties on Twitter's brains would break if I said it to them.
Mm-hmm.
But his name checking of Kamala and Biden calling him has been more gracious than they have been on camera to him.
Yeah, on the right.
And he's the one who got almost shot. He did not. I want to be clear. Nobody shot at him this time. The guy didn't get a shot off because the Secret Service engaged with him before he did, which is great news. But it's just wild to me.
Well, that he recounted how close it was with the graphic, the chart on illegal immigration, and how just by chance it happened to be in one. He usually does it at the beginning, at the end versus the beginning, or whatever it was, and that he had happened to turn, and it was at that moment. But it was Trump being very Trump, where he said he felt his ear and he looked at the blood, and then he says, "It's not good. I knew it was not good." And but in addition to that, then he said, it could be, a higher authority that he said. So he doesn't go out. He's not as overt. A lot of people are, like to get very religious about this, but he just was like something out there, which is for Trump. Okay. That, that's as good as it gets. The other funny thing was Kat Timpf asking him about Area 51, what's going on there. Right. And he stops and he says, he goes, believe it or not, I get asked that question more than any other question. And what he shared was these Air Force pilots in F-22s, serious guys, they're crew cuts. And he goes, these are not, these are not jokers. And that they said, they just reported matter of factly, they saw, disc-shaped objects flying 4 times faster than they were. And the F-22 is very fast. And if it goes into super cruise, it's really fast, which is some sort of pseudo classified. It's not afterburner, but it's this other method of going really fast in an F-22, which is a stealth air superiority fighter.
Right.
And Trump, though, doesn't say, oh, so I think it's something, there's something out there. He says, I don't know. And he actually said, he expressed skepticism about being when we say UFO as an alien, but, UAF, I think is what they say now, or whatever the term is, and whatever it is. But it is legitimately what they're saying is they see something in the sky and you don't know what it is.
Right.
That's what they mean by that. They're not saying
that was a very Trumpian phrasing of that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's so you
see something and we don't know what it is.
That's literally what, it meant to be as a UFO. My I keep on thinking that, I'm not ruling out that possibility here on this show, of course, but and I've seen weird stuff in the sky too that I will maintain is unidentified. I don't know what it is that I saw, but
don't get our podcast banned.
I know. That's why I'm saying I don't know. I'm just saying that's literally why it's a UFO. But I have this terrible feeling that it's something hypersonic from another country. That's what I think. But I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you know more than I do about the UFOs. And Donald Trump knows more than both of us, probably.
Yeah, well, he does. Yeah, that's what my son was watching. He goes, "Oh, he's got to know more. He's holding back. Holding back."
But when does he hold back? So, like, I feel like maybe.
Well, that's how. Well, on the one hand, maybe that tells you just how serious it is. There you go.
Interesting.
Oh, we didn't get a chance to talk about the pagers and the walkie-talkies, Mary Kat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay.
Terrible. Okay. I've got a couple other things on my list here, but we're gonna do this because this is a huge story, and I meant to put it at the beginning. We got wrapped up in 2024.
We did. We just did it again.
So yes, I'm going to pull up the New York Times tally. This is reporting from yesterday. At least 20 people were killed and 450 people were injured in these wireless device explosions in Lebanon. This is the second attack. The first one took out a bunch of leadership among Hezbollah. The trick was somewhere along the line, some Taiwanese made, it looks like, pagers were gotten to Hezbollah before they got to Hezbollah, someone with an interest in blowing up Hezbollah physically intercepted those pagers, put a trigger, a switch, and C4 inside them, knowing
3,000 of them, by the way. That is
knowing
a lot.
that they would go to Hezbollah operatives, that they would be warned by them.
Right. It's not going to children.
And
it's not.
All these pagers operated properly until the moment that Israeli forces, intelligence, what entity it is, hit the switch, and they all blew up simultaneously at 3:30 p.m. in Lebanon.
There was word apparently that somebody in Hezbollah had gotten wise or became suspicious of the pager, and I think supposedly that's when Israel's like, it's now or never.
We got to do it. Yeah. So yes, all of these went off simultaneously. There was a lot of injury to those wearing them. Yeah. Perhaps in the nether regions, there's been a lot of memeing about that.
According to Axios, a lot of crotch burns and explosions.
The idea was for a page to come in, and then there was a delay. So they're looking at the pager when it blows up.
Yeah.
So either way, you're getting hurt. Yeah. But those who were more seriously injured or dead are the ones who had it near their face.
Right, their face.
The reason they were using pagers, by the way, is because they were afraid of the Israelis hacking high-tech stuff.
Right.
So the Israelis went low-tech along with Hezbollah and put physical bombs inside these pagers. The sophistication and level of targeting here is very impressive.
So that was the first step, and then after that they said, quick, we now have to revert to even lower tech, meaning the walkie-talkies.
Yep.
And this happened yesterday, and back-to-back days the walkie-talkies blew up.
I mean,
it's really, so I mean, I'm not sure what they do next, smoke signals, the Pony Express. I really don't know.
Just tactically, it's amazing to have pulled this off.
It's the most, I mean, they've had, Israel's been doing the bomb phone since I think 1972, maybe, so I mean, they did this on landlines, but now we're talking, it's like low tech, but it's still high tech. And the notion of it that what they've done is they've taken electronic warfare to a whole new level. You think about various.
Well, and intel. I mean, the intel and the human intel necessary to pull this off.
Right.
Because you got to know who's carrying the pagers, all that information.
They had to make sure that was correct.
But so it's incredibly targeted because the operatives are wearing these pagers. Right. And there's crowing about the Iranian ambassador, I believe.
Yes.
Got injured. And the question is, of course, why does he have a Hezbollah pager?
Yeah.
We need to have an answer to that question.
Right.
Now, there are situations in which, even though this is the most target attack you could possibly have, there can be collateral damage because someone might be standing near somebody when something explodes. But I do think the complaints about this
Mm-hmm.
just reveal once again that people don't want the Israelis to fight.
Yeah.
There's, of course, talk of escalation and fears of escalation. Let me tell you what the escalation was. Hezbollah has been shooting into northern Israel
15,000 rockets
since October 7th.
Yeah.
Hezbollah lives, dwells, stalks Israel from below the line that the UN says they should be behind constantly. Hezbollah indiscriminately killed 12 children on a soccer field.
That's right.
In northern Israel. So that's your escalation. Okay. And this is an attempt to stop the escalation by winning and by crippling, literally and figuratively, their ability to do this stuff.
The idea that the way to wage this battle is by just pushing them back and just waiting for them to come at you is absurd. I mean, it's the Biden, Harris administration approach to this, which is, not to escalate. So just let them come over and then, block the missiles when they cross your airspace. So that was, again, they're trying to end this. And certainly Netanyahu has sent that message, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, again, it's just truly remarkable. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is enraged about this and wants to charge them with, some sort of international law violation. The New York Times, PBS NewsHour do not refer to Hezbollah as terrorist groups. They call them Muslim groups. I think that's on the New York Times.
You know what it is? It's just a soup kitchen that dwells on the Israel border. It's just an NGO. Hezbollah's an NGO.
I was amused by, people on Twitter, outraged because their friend had one of these pages that blew up. Oh, okay. So your friend works for Hezbollah. Thanks. Good to know.
Oh,
you know what I think they're going to have to do? Oh, go ahead. I was
going to say, by the way, any guesses whether AOC has ever complained about Hezbollah before, like when it was killing 12 children?
No, when they're launching tens of thousands of rockets.
And by the way, our ally currently has some 80,000 citizens evacuated from northern Israel because Hezbollah's much more sophisticated munitions. Their much more sophisticated munitions can be used to hurt people in much more serious ways in the north. So these families have been displaced for now almost a year.
Yeah. It's
and
coming
Israel needs to find a way to secure that area. One step is crippling Hezbollah, but do not be surprised when there is a ground war at some point, because these guys, again, have much more sophisticated equipment than Hamas and have been doing acts of war for the past year and then some.
Right, and they're Iranian proxies. And so Israel is facing a two-front war, and the real question is how much help are they going to get from the United States? That's a question. I was going to say what happens because they went, they couldn't use the phone, so they went for the pagers. They couldn't use the pagers, so they went to the walkie-talkies. What do they do next? My theory is the beacons of Gondor from Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you got to that part, Mary Catherine, the beacons of Gondor. They could send
my
signal.
Lord of the Rings trivia, not great. Not great.
Oh, yeah.
Someday I'm going to read those books with my kids and then I'll know.
All right. Oh, that's right. You're doing Harry Potter. I'm sorry. That's what I get confused.
You can spoil Lord of the Rings for me using the movies when I get to the end of the
I can't wait for that.
One thing, a news item that I did want to mention is the Teamsters decided not to endorse.
That was huge.
Which is a pretty huge story. They're going to, the Biden-Harris folks will try, or Harris will try to downplay this. Harris-Walz. The International Board of Teamsters declined to endorse a presidential candidate on Wednesday after releasing internal polling that showed a majority of its members supported former President Donald Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris. That's a rough lead on CNN.com for the Harris-Walz
The fact that, Teamsters who, the last time that they did not endorse was 1996, right? My question is, if it was 60-40 the other way, or 60-39, whatever, 59-39, do you think that they would have endorsed Kamala Harris?
Oh, that's a good question.
And and if not, like if I were Trump and they asked him about it and he took it as a win. He should, because it's a counterintuitive win, right?
Yeah, These people should be sealed for Democrats, but they're not.
My question is, my second question is, what is the threshold then? If 70%, would 70% be enough to get a Teamster endorsement? But so we obviously know how these people feel. And Trump had a very interesting reply, which is, I've known these people for decades. They drive the cement trucks. They build the frames. Again, Donald Trump is not a real estate mogul. He's a developer, he's real estate developer. And it's a totally different world. You're dealing with the construction and the contracts, all these different things. It's grittier. And that's where the Teamsters are, obviously. And they, all the stuff that they did during COVID by transporting everything.
If he ends up winning this election, the big secret is just like not crapping on working class men.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Now,
right.
I don't know. The Democratic Party has been doing that for years, for generations. I don't know if he can get those voters over the line if they have the get out the vote.
We don't know. And the polls are tied now, right? We have new polls that are out that show that they're tied.
It's unclear what's happening in Pennsylvania, which of course is very important. There's a range today of new polls that are like +4 for Harris or +1 for Trump. So all within the margin of error and little confusing at this point.
The Fox News poll is interesting because I think it had Kamala up, but at the same time, he was leading in swing states. So there you go.
This is going to be a slog.
Very close.
It's going to be a slog.
Okay.
So we'll keep you entertained and informed. But I feel like next week we should do maybe all the stories we haven't done other than
I know you wanted to talk about
assassination attempts.
COVID. I wanted to do my observations of Sean Combs. I was going to say Puffy.
I hope you didn't observe too closely.
But there's something weird going on. And let me just say this. They found 1,000 bottles of lubrication. He has chafing issues, Mary Catherine. He has chafing issues.
He just goes for a lot of runs.
That's right. You know how it is. As his lawyer, that's what I would have said. No, it is not a funny story. Believe me, it is really sinister. But on better news is Justin Timberlake. He's not doing any time, and he went out and said, "Don't drink and drive."
Okay.
So there you go.
That's our celebrity news for today.
Okay.
The P. Diddy thing, I haven't even looked into it because I'm scared.
Well, I mean, it's okay.
We'll talk about it next time.
We'll save it. Yeah. Okay. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube or Instagram, and you should. Thank you for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.